Common Sense Army, it is Tuesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're talking about Kristi Noem. You aren't going to want to miss this episode. This is political suicide at its finest, and it's what Republicans cannot afford to do right now. I'll break it down in this episode. Listen up, because this is the Why I'm Right podcast.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
Welcome to the Why I'm Right podcast. I am Matt Taylor, and if this is your first time here on the Why I'm Right podcast, I'm happy to have you. Today's episode is a little bit different. Normally, we have long-form content, longer episodes, breakdown conversations, but today's episode is so interesting. And what's going on right now with Kristi Noem, what just happened with Kristi Noem, is so blatant and stupid that this episode is going to be pretty short, pretty sweet, because there's no justification for what Kristi Noem just did, except she's trying to commit political suicide. I'm going to break that down in a second. As I say on every episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, if you could do me a favor, we're trying to grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. The one way you can help grow the Common Sense Army is by clicking subscribe and sharing these videos with your friends, with your family, with people who agree and people who don't agree. We're going to have the conversation here and ask the why every single day and grow the Common Sense Army. So if you could just click the subscribe button, it means a lot and it helps more than you know. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. If you don't know who Kristi Noem is, we have to start there. Kristi Noem is the governor of South Dakota. And she is on Donald Trump's short list. She was on Donald Trump's short list before this week to be vice president of the United States of America and be Trump's running mate in this upcoming election, in the election that we're currently living, the 2024 election. So she had everything going for him. This woman had absolutely everything going for him. She was getting media attention left and right. She was becoming a household name in the Republican movement. And she had the opportunity in front of her. And many people don't understand the opportunity. If you are Trump's VP right now, whether Trump wins this election, obviously I think it's critically important he does, but whether Trump wins or loses in this upcoming election, you are going to inherit the Republican Party after Donald Trump. You're going to inherit the Make America Great Again movement after Donald Trump. This person, whoever Trump selects to be the vice president in this upcoming election, is going to inherit the Make America Great Again movement post Donald Trump. So this person, whoever it's going to be, is going to have a lot of political power and become the next generation of the Republican movement, the Make America Great Again movement. And this woman, Kristi Noem, had absolutely everything going for her. She was in the public eye day in, day out. Everyone's talking about Donald Trump's short list. Everyone's talking about who'd be a good fit with Donald Trump. She fits the mold. She's a governor. She's a strong woman. She fills the gaps that Trump has right now. She brings the mother out there to Donald Trump. And she would have been a very good vice presidential candidate. All she had to do was wait. All she had to do was wait and not do anything stupid over the next few months or whenever Trump's going to announce who the VP is. All she had to do was nothing stupid, and she was potentially going to be the VP. And if not the VP, she's definitely going to be in the cabinet for the Trump administration. And what does this woman do? This woman who's supposedly a very strong politician, a very good governor in the state of South Dakota, someone who represents the people of South Dakota. I just said it. All she had to do was nothing stupid. She could sit on her hands, do nothing stupid for the next few months, and your political future is set in stone. And what does she do? In the middle of an election year, where you're the potential vice president for one of the biggest candidates in the history of American politics and the history of the world, she decides it's going to be a great idea in the middle of an election year. She's going to try to monetize off of her name recognition, monetize off of the media she's getting, monetize off of being Trump's potential VP. And again, I'm fine with that. That's capitalism at its finest. Seize your moment, Kristi Noem. Seize the moment. Seize the media. Seize the attention. And what's crazier to me, and the part that, again, on this podcast, we ask why, what's crazier to me is if you're potentially going to be Donald Trump's VP and you're writing a book in the middle of an election year, and your only job is don't do anything stupid in the book, you're having your advisors read this book before you release it, I'm assuming. And if I really wanted to be Trump's VP, I'm probably sending Trump and his team copies of the book in advance. And I'm going to dive into it here. I'm going to play a clip here so you could hear it, not from me, but this is what happened in her book. Excerpts have been released from The Guardian, and people are up in arms, and I will say they have every right to be up in arms. Here's the clip on Morning Joe on MSNBC talking about Kristi Noem's book release and the excerpts that were released from Guardian. Here it is.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is defending her decision to kill her 14-month-old female dog, Cricket. It's a puppy, actually.
Kill the puppy, yeah.
Noem, who's considered a contender to become Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate, received backlash from both sides of the aisle after a passage in her upcoming memoir revealed a startling anecdote where she admitted to murdering her dog. According to an excerpt from The Guardian, Noem took Cricket, that's the little girl puppy's name, on a pheasant hunt with older dogs, but writes that the young pup ruined the hunt after chasing the birds and going out of her mind.
Oh my God, what's she going to do? She had a bad morning.
So the dog was bounding around with excitement and so happy.
So she said too happy.
Noem describes calling Cricket, then using an electronic collar to attempt to bring her under control. One of those shock collars, you know? Nothing worked to stop Cricket from running around with joy. Then on the way home after the hunt, as Noem stopped to talk to a local family, Cricket escaped Noem's truck and attacked the family's chickens, grabbing one chicken at a time, crunching it to death with one bite,
by the way,
and then dropping it to attack
this
another.
Happens. The question is, like, how can
That's a terrible moment.
How can a governor not keep
I've been there.
a dog under control?
Well, it happens.
Put it on a leash or whatever. She's blaming the dog.
This is the part I don't
breaking
understand.
out of the truck.
I hated that dog, Noem writes, adding that Cricket had proved herself. Cricket. Untrainable. Cricket.
It's Cricket.
Dangerous to anyone she came in contact with.
Fault,
Cricket.
Not her.
And less worthless as a hunting dog. Cricket. At that moment, Noem says, I realized I had to put her down.
All right.
It was not a pleasant job, she writes, but it had to be done.
She took the puppy to a gravel pit and gunned
After
it down.
Noem's story caused controversy, the governor doubled down and tried to paint the story as one of the necessary dark sides of farm life.
No.
Writing on X, the fact is South Dakota law states that dogs who attack and kill livestock can be put down. given that Cricket had shown aggressive behavior toward people by biting them, the dog tried to bite her. I decided what I did. I followed the law.
Shooting and her in a gravel
was responsible.
All right.
Being responsible
All right,
parent,
let's go.
dog owner, and
We've
neighbor.
done enough of this.
Hold on. She then revealed that she killed the family goat because it was gross. And it knocked down her kid. Goats do that. Goats can be a little gross. But she killed it in the gravel pit.
So let's say this actually happened. Let's say this is a normal practice in South Dakota. I don't know if it is. I doubt it is. I doubt this goes on all the time. But let's just say this happens. I just mentioned to you she's on the short list for Vice President of the United States of America, where more than 50% of Americans in this nation own a dog and 70% or greater actually own a pet in this country and care about animals. Why in your right mind do you not have any political savviness? Do you not have any mind for this? Who thought this was a good idea to release in your book, in your memoir, that you shot a dog in the face and killed a dog because of behavior issues at 14 months old when you didn't train the dog? You got a hunting dog and you didn't train the hunting dog, and all of a sudden the hunting dog went out and killed birds. That's what hunting dogs do. But who thought it would be a good idea to include this story? Why not just not put it in the book? You know, all of us have done stuff in our lifetimes that are questionable. I've never killed a dog. I don't think I've done something on that level necessarily. But we've all done things in our lifetime. But why would you publicize this in the middle of an election year when you are potentially going to get the most powerful position in the Republican Party right now? Because guess what? No one's outdoing Donald Trump. Trump is going to be there in the Republican Party until he's not. And so you have the opportunity right now to be his right-hand person and take over the movement that is so strong. And she just blew it up, or at least it looks like she just blew it up. And so, like I said, she had to have had political advisors read her book before she released it. And again, I'm saying this to you. If you and I were going to be on Donald Trump's shortlist for vice president, and I was releasing a book to monetize off of that potential vice presidency, I would probably send the book to Trump. So again, I ask why. And my belief, and this is strictly my opinion, there is no fact behind this whatsoever. My belief is Kristi Noem knows she's not going to be the vice president. I don't know if they had a conversation, Trump and her. The Trump team has told her, you are not going to be the vice president. I think Trump has already made his decision who he's going to be, who he's going to pick in that vice presidency role. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's anyone that we're seeing in the media right now. That's another story for another time. But I believe Kristi Noem is aware that she is not going to be selected to be the vice president. And so she has an opportunity right now to take the choice out of Trump's hands. Because now Trump cannot select her, even if he wanted to. Trump could not select her to be vice president because she is blown up. She's damaged goods today. So I believe Kristi Noem was aware of the fact that she was not going to be vice president, and she said, you know what? I'm going to self-implode in the short run and publicize something that is popular in South Dakota potentially. She cited South Dakota law and talks about how this is a normal practice in farm culture. But I believe she released this intentionally to self-implode so that people are saying now in the media, Trump cannot select her. So she took the public decision that Trump is going to make announcing someone else as vice president. And now she's going to say, well, Trump couldn't select me because of this book and this memoir. But I still think it's a stupid political decision to murder a dog, shoot the dog in the face, and then write that you shot the dog in the face in your book. But as I said, there has to be more to this story because it does not make sense why anyone who has any political ambition beyond being the governor of South Dakota, which, again, if this is not a popular, again, I'm not going to try to act like I'm an expert on South Dakota culture, farm culture, but I doubt everyone in South Dakota is saying, go Kristi Noem right now, we're happy you shot your dog in the face. So why would anyone that had any kind of political ambition beyond South Dakota, or even in South Dakota in the future, why would they release something so stupid? The only way it can be defined is as political suicide. And so I believe, my opinion is, she was aware through conversations with Trump or the Trump team or the Trump campaign that she was not going to be selected as vice president, and she did not want to, the public to know that she was not Trump's choice. So she self-imploded and released this stupid part in her book, this stupid story in the book. And now she's the butt of everyone's jokes around the country. PETA's up in arms. The Democrats are up in arms. And Republicans aren't supporting this. And to be honest with you, I couldn't agree more. When 50% of Americans own dogs, 70% of Americans own pets, you probably shouldn't release a story of you shooting your dog in the face at 14 months old because the dog acted the way most dogs would act at 14 months old. That's not going to be a popular position amongst the American people. The bigger theme and the bigger story here is the Democrats are self-imploding as we speak. With these senseless protests going on college campuses around the country, yelling death to Jews, death to America, death to Israel, they are self-imploding. Joe Biden can't put together a complete sentence on the public stage. He can't walk straight. He can't walk upstairs without falling down. And all this does, it gives them an out. It changes the narrative of the media. And I'll be honest with you, as self-imploding as it was, and as much as it was political suicide, it's not a good look for somebody who Trump was considering to be vice president to do this. Let the Democrats self-implode. Let the Democrats self-destruct. We cannot afford this right now. We can't afford self-destructing behavior by Republicans right now. The margins are too close. The margins are too small. We can't afford stupid stories coming out that we're releasing. How many people knew that Kristi Noem shot her dog in the face in her backyard in a gravel pit, and then went on to shoot her goat in the gravel pit? How many people would have known that story? I think it's a very select few. It probably wouldn't have gotten out between now and when Trump announced his VP, or even after Trump announced his VP. So she self-imploded and self-released this story that makes her damaged goods today. And like I said, the only logical thing that makes any sense to me is that she was aware of the fact that Trump was not going to select her, and she didn't want the embarrassment that could have been on the national stage that she wasn't selected as the vice president. So she self-imploded, took the decision out of Trump's hands in order to save face in South Dakota. Because anytime she runs in the future, every political ad is going to be a dog getting shot in the face. Every political ad you're going to see across the country, whether she's running for governorship in South Dakota. Again, I'm not sure what the culture is in South Dakota when it comes to shooting dogs in the face, but I can't imagine it's a popular position. So even my theory doesn't even fully conclude anything that makes logical sense. And the important part of this is, like I said, we're in the middle of an election year where the margins are too small. We can't afford self-destructing behavior. Let the Democrats self-destruct. Let inflation speak for itself. Let the border speak for itself. Let the Democrats and these protesters and these George Soros-funded protests going on across the country, let them speak for themselves. Don't distract from it. Let Trump be in court every day and show the American people that Biden is weaponizing the Department of Justice day in and day out. Let that speak for itself. We can't afford distractions like this, folks. I had to have this episode because, again, this is the type of distraction in an election year that makes a difference. And it surely impacted who Trump's going to select as his VP because now the short list just got that much shorter. And so as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, we have a lot of episodes coming out this week. We're going to dive into these protests even further. We're going to talk about the Trump court cases again. And later this week, I'm going to tell you who I believe Donald Trump is going to select as his VP. You don't want to miss that because, like I said, I don't believe it's anyone on this so-called short list that the GOP is throwing out there in the media right now. And this story leads to it, plays into it. Trump's not a conventional guy. I don't think he's going to have a conventional VP. People know who Trump is at this point. People know his policies at this point. People know what America looked like under Donald Trump. I believe he has free reign. He needs to be smart with who he picks. But I believe the person he picks, he is knowing up front that person is going to have political power for the foreseeable future because they will inherit the Make America Great Again movement. They will inherit the Republican Party. And the one thing we know for sure after this episode is that person won't be Kristi Noem. So as I always say again on the Why I'm Right podcast, share these videos with your friends. Let me know. Email me at matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. If you want to be on the Why I'm Right podcast, you have a question for me, I'll do a full episode going through the questions I've gotten. I've gotten a bunch of questions sent to my email. If you want your question featured, just send me an email right now, matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. And as always, subscribe, share these videos with your friends. We're growing the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time, and we're going to make a difference in this country. So I hope you guys have a great Tuesday and a great rest of your week. We'll see you back tomorrow. This is the Why I'm Right podcast.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.